Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. My name is Tiara and I am the owner of Black Teacup. In this week's video, I'll be showing you guys how I created this sweater tumbler. I've been wanting to create a sweater inspired tumbler for a couple months now. So I went to YouTube to see if I could find a tutorial, and I did find two. I found one from Rock City Tumblers and I found another from FairyTaleGlitter. I will have both of their tutorials linked down below, as they were very useful in the process as well. I did do a few things differently, so if you're interested in knowing how I created this, continue to watch. Everything that I use will be linked down below in the description box. Also, if you have any questions or comments or concerns, leave them down in the box below and I will get back to you. So, without further ado, let's get started. Oh, yeah, don't forget to subscribe and don't forget to hit the like button for me. Thanks, guys. Okay, so I'm starting out with a 15-ounce skinny straight that I purchased from Last Stop Wilby. There is a discount code down below for 10% off if you want to purchase tumblers from them. I love this company very much. All right, so I'm going to start out by sanding my tumbler, as I always do, using my palm sander, and then I'm going to just wipe it down with some alcohol before we move on to the next step. All right, so after my cup is nice and clean, I'm going to go ahead and measure it for my template. So as far as the length, you can do this with a ruler, or you can crease the paper, which you will see in a second. So here I measured up and down, it's about 6.5 inches. And to measure around the cup, I'm just going to wrap a piece of paper, and what you're going to do is kind of draw a line, kind of go along the edge of that paper where the two edges meet. That way you know how much to cut off. It doesn't have to be perfect. You kind of just want to know where you need to cut the paper. And then for the top, you can just crease that in. That's the other way that you can measure the top. And then when you unroll the paper, you will have creases. And I take my paper cutter and just cut along those creases, and that will give me my template. And you see how my edges are crinkled? That is okay. We're going to just cut that off because that was the inside of the cup and we don't need it. This is what you're left with, and you can test it out by wrapping it around the tumbler. Everything should line up, nice and perfectly. You can use this technique to make a template for any of your tumblers, even the taper ones. So the next step you want to do is get a ruler, and you're going to measure the exact measurements of the template, the paper. So this went down to 6.625. I have a little chart that shows me divisions of an inch, and that really helps to get down to the exact measurements. All right, so going across, it was a little over 9 inches, so it was 9.1875. And I'm getting these exact numbers with this little chart. You're going to see it in the next scene. So once you have your exact measurements, you're going to go over to your computer. Here is the chart I was telling you about that I use. It helps me to get the decimal for each notch on the ruler, which really helps. All right, so I'm using Silhouette Studio. I'm going to use a rectangle, and I'm going to just punch in those numbers so that I make the exact size. So once you put in your numbers for the length and the width, you should have the exact same rectangle on your screen as the rectangle you have as the paper, the template that we made. So after this, what I'm going to do is grab my SVG file and put it inside that box to make it fit. And once I have that, I'll cut out any of the excess that's outside of the box. And then you should have your image ready to go. And you can just cut it as is. I did just turn it red so that you can see it a little better, but it doesn't matter what color you put it. If anybody has any questions on this process, on how to make the template for your tumbler, just leave a comment down below and I'm happy to help. Before we lay our template, I'm going to base paint our tumbler white using Rust-Oleum Flat White. And the weeding process for this is very easy and satisfying. So we're going to do it in reverse one time. Then Okay, back to business. Now I have my transfer tape, and what we're going to do now is just transfer this template onto our tumbler. So I cut out a big piece of transfer tape, and I'm just going to burnish it really good onto the transfer tape and make sure everything pulls up nice and evenly. If not, of course, burnish some more. So I ended up using my paper cutter to trim away a little bit from the top and a little bit from the bottom. I didn't want the template to go all the way to the rim, and I didn't want it hanging off the bottom, so I just cut off a little of the space on the top and the bottom. I left about an inch of transfer tape on the end so I could grab it, and then I just cut off a little piece of the white backing just to lay the image to get it started. Once you lined it up how you want it on the cup, then you can remove the rest of the backing. I make sure to do this slowly. Just lift the backing and then rub your way till you get to the end. Just keep rubbing all the way around the cup until all of the backing is released. I had a few that stuck to the contact paper, so I'm just using my little pick tool to stick them manually. So once you have your template on your cup, what I'm going to do is use my hot glue gun to trace the marks. I don't want it to be perfect because it's supposed to be a sweater tumbler. I don't care about the little strings because it reminds me of the fabric. So that's why I went with the hot glue method. This process can be long depending on the design. All of the little dots did take a little time. The lines and such, they weren't that bad. I didn't care about my glue coming out kind of fat in some spots and skinny in the others. Again, this will give it texture in the end. This was a fairly long process. It took me about 40 minutes to do it from start to finish, but it was well worth it in the end. I love the way it turned out. You can see this big gap right there between my template. I didn't like how it met up, so I took off the vinyl and just improvised by adding one little hot glue line. So after the hot glue is dry, I'm going to just take it outside to spray paint it. Okay, so here it is with the hot glue on it. It is dry for the most part because the hot glue does not take very long to dry. I love the way the texture feels, and the next thing we're going to do is take it outside to base paint the tumbler and the hot glue. We'll be using this metallic gold by Krylon and this pink peony by Rust-Oleum. I was going for a rose gold to gold ombre look, and these are the colors I chose. In hindsight, I would not have done the vinyl black because it will show through sanding later on in the process, and I had to make a few touch-ups. So I recommend using a lighter color vinyl for your template. But anyways, moving forward, I am going to just spray paint on top of the hot glue and the tumbler before I move on to my glitter. Okay, so after your spray paint is dry, I'm going to go in with some Krylon spray adhesive. You want to make sure you shake this can up very, very well before you spray it. I'm going to give my tumbler a very generous coat. This is actually my second layer of glitter. You can probably already see it on there, but I'm going to go in with a second layer. Anytime I use a spray adhesive, I always go in twice. So next we're going to glitter our tumblers. I am glittering outside. I have my glitter and my parchment paper to catch the glitter. I have already sprayed my tumbler, and I feel like when I use spray adhesive, you have to work a little quicker. But that's okay. So I'm going to use Rose Gold from Michaels and Chantilly from Peachy Olive Glitters. Both will be linked down below. When I'm glittering my tumbler, of course, I'm going to glitter at an angle. At the very bottom, of course, it'll be more horizontal. But as I want the color to fade, you're going to tilt your cup more vertically, and it'll just fall down the sides. Then you'll do the exact same thing with your second color. So I'm going to hold my cup the other way and then let it fall down in the opposite direction. I hardly ever glitter outside. I don't know what got into me this particular day. I don't know why I chose spray adhesive. You could probably, I'm sure, do the same thing, use the epoxy method, and you would only have to go in one time with glitter. But I was just trying some new things. I like to try different techniques. But as far as glittering outside, I probably won't do that again because it was kind of windy, and yeah, we don't want to waste glitter. But here is my tumbler, all glitter and finished. The next thing we're going to do is let this dry completely, and then we're going to spray it with some gloss clear. And I love the texture of this tumbler. Here it is with just raw glitter before spray paint. So here is our gloss clear by Rust-Oleum. I'm going to give this a good 2 coats before we move on to our first layer of epoxy. So y'all, I was nervous about applying the epoxy. I don't want to lose the texture of my sweater tumbler. So I started out with maybe 20 ml of epoxy, very small amount, just enough to coat it. And I'm going to use my fingers, my gloved fingers, to work my way through those creases and crevices and all those bumps. So just a thin layer, don't go overboard. Like I really use my fingers to keep going back and smoothing things out. I didn't want any pulling in certain areas, so I just kept babysitting my cup. Just going back and running my fingers through those bumps and lines and all of that. And I only did this for maybe the first 20 minutes or so. I'm taking off any extra epoxy and rubbing it off of my gloved fingertip and just scraping it back on the cup. Like I said, I don't want way too much epoxy, and I don't want my tumbler to lose its texture. Alright, so of course I'm going to go in with my torch. I'll let this spin for about 6 hours. And then I'm going to go back in with a second layer of epoxy, doing the exact same thing, running my fingers through all of the bumps. I forgot to record the sanding process, but you guys should be familiar with that. If you're not, check my previous videos. I sanded around the rim of the cup, and I also used a block sander to sand around the entire cup. Now, I did go a little too deep, and it kind of scraped the paint off, and this is what I was talking about earlier. I don't suggest using a dark colored vinyl because you can see through if you sand too deep. So the way I'm going to fix that, I'm just taking some cream acrylic paint and a Q-tip and some Mod Podge. I'm mixing them all together, just a drop of the paint into some Mod Podge, and I'm going to apply it on those areas that need to be fixed with the Q-tip, and then I'll sprinkle some of the same colored glitter. Once that touch-up has dried, I will go in with my final layer of epoxy. At this point, my cup still has plenty of texture. I love it. It is exactly what I wanted it to be. So I'm going to go back in with another thin layer of epoxy, using my gloved finger to work my way through all of those bumps and all of that stuff. And just work it all the way around. And that should pretty much be it, guys. You can do any color you want, any pattern you want. It wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. It's just something I've always wanted to try out, and I am happy with the outcome. So you guys, let me know if you have any questions in the comments. Let me know what you think. Let me know if I can help. And thanks for watching, guys. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe. I appreciate you all. Join us on Facebook at Black Teacup Community. We'd love to see you there.